Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic.
What's a situation that most people won't understand until they've been in the same situation themselves? Taking care of a parent with dementia. Been there. Plus, people don't understand that when our dementia-suffering parent dies, the overwhelming emotion felt by the caregiver is not sadness, but relief. Relief that our loved one is no longer suffering, relief that the hardship of caregiving is over. The sadness already took place, we already underwent an extended grieving process while they were still alive, as our loved one disappears bit by painful bit. Lost my grandma a year ago to her 15-year battle with dementia. Relief is a strange emotion to feel in that moment, but it's accurate. They didn't know where they were, who was who, what was going on, and at that point, are almost if not completely vegetative. They're alive, but they're not living, they're suffering. No one wants that for themselves, let alone a loved one. Severe burnout, like full fugue state mental shutdown. Tried describing it to some folks and they just can't comprehend that level of chronic stress and exhaustion. Watching a movie or taking a day off is not going to help at that point. Still recovering myself from a pretty severe burnout in 2021. I still have days where memory is leakier than a sieve and I have to ask the same question and hope I write down the answer the right way multiple times an hour. It makes you feel so useless and incompetent. 90% better though, these days happen less and less frequently now. Having abusive parents completely skews your perception of normal. To this day I'll relate something I thought was normal or funny and be met with looks of horror. I was once complimented that I would make an excellent diplomat. The plain fact is that I spent my entire childhood negotiating with terrorists, so you have to build up a set of diplomatic skills very quickly. I can relate. I'm very quick to notice when someone's mood is changing for the worse and was more often the soother rather than the soothed. This led to developing a near-crushing sense of empathy, which made me a tasty target for folks with narcissistic traits. I got much better at tending to my boundaries and I am currently living my best work life as a nanny, teacher. Ouch, well said. An old friend of mine used to say, of course your parents can push all your buttons. They're the ones who installed them. Quote, what sucks too is having abusive parents and not realizing you did for any length of time. 32, really only clicked a few years ago that my mom didn't teach me to tie my shoes or brush my teeth or really check on me. I was fine, alone, a good quiet kid unlike my older sibling who was hell on earth. She still is LMAO. I thought I had a good childhood until like 18 months ago before the series of, wait a second, s. Edit, changed wording as to not make it seem like a competition over who has it, worse. The, wait a second, s, fucked me up quarantine. My dad was physically abusive, my mom always seemed like an angel in comparison. Then, came the, wait a second, when I realized the way she was abusive, it was more manipulative. And took me down a spiral during quarantine. Emotional abuse is like this. It's so insidious and subtle in the ways it fucks you up, and so easy to defend write off as, not abuse. Quote. Being disabled. 100%. And also being an unpaid carer. People have absolutely no clue until it happens to them. I know back pain and issues don't technically count as a disability, but oh my gosh, I did not realize how severely my life could be affected by my back going out. I helped my partner through his for months as he recovered, but I had no idea how evil it was until I got my own taste. Being his carer was also a huge eye-opener for us, and I think it truly showed him that it was okay to not be okay and that I could help in significant ways, and that was okay too. Role reversal can be tough to break into, especially when one of you is feeling vulnerable and broken. But dang, is it ever exhausting to be a carer when life keeps going and you still have all the other stuff to worry about. Being sick or injured and being a carer is so rough. I have so much empathy for those who do that long term. Now we're both better about helping each other when it's needed and accepting help when we need it. Those times also helped me understand invisible disabilities and how to offer more grace for random people who don't move as fast as I think they should. I remember having to drive with my back pain at peak levels, and corners and speed bumps just about had me in tears. I try to remember all that whenever I see someone cross a street super slow or take a corner at a crawl. But I definitely never imagined how painful it truly was until I experienced it myself. I now have way more empathy for those who face a disability for a majority of their life. Depression. More specifically major depressive disorder. Many people have experienced some kind of depression in their lives, but when it lasts more than 3 weeks, like 30 years, it's another level that folks can't understand. No, some kind of boot camp will not fix this. My wife years ago had a severe mental breakdown due to work, so major that she developed psychosis. I won't go into all of the details, but for 8 months when she completely shut down, stopped eating, talking to people, acknowledging reality, I didn't know if I would ever get her back. It took one very scary night to get her to finally accept that she needed help. It's been over 2 years from the episode and she's back to normal now and healthy, but whenever there is a bit of depression we make sure we sit down and talk through it. Edit, misspelled severe. I'm so happy you stuck with her through her struggle, you sound like an amazing partner. Knowing someone who was murdered. Not dead from old age or an illness or killed in an accident, but purposeful murder. It is horrific on every level, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Makes a lot of issues more personal and less generally political, especially when you add in cultural context for the country it happens in. Especially once you realize that life is not like a TV show and the person will never get caught or punished, and the police really don't seem to care that much. They don't care at all. I had a loved one who was murdered, they have witnesses, video footage of the vehicle, and DNA. Nothing has been done, and this is going on 3 years. I even personally found a witness who heard my last words. And still, nothing. In the instance of the person I knew, the killers did get caught after a few days, any more time and they might have gotten away with it. It's unclear to me where they're currently at. I don't know if a trial or sentencing has occurred yet. I'm just glad that we know the names and can track whatever eventually happens to them. My mom is pretty emotionally closed off. When she was a sophomore in college in Milwaukee in the 80s, her roommate was murdered right outside the dorm. She opened up to me about it once, quietly, and I could just see this distress lurking under the surface that I had never seen her express before. For somebody as stoic as she is, it made me realize how much weight she's been carrying for the past 4 decades. Was the perp caught and convicted? I knew a man, he died a few years ago at the age of 97, and we'd always known that he was a World War II combat veteran, in Europe, but only in the months before his death did he tell anyone that he had helped liberate a concentration camp. He just couldn't talk about it. My brother was murdered in 2017. Listening to the 911 wrecked me. I couldn't watch murder scenes in movies or scenes where people died for a while. I'm an EMT now, but at the time it really fucked me up. That was a scream I'll never get out of my head, listening to when my neighbor found out that her son was murdered. It was 40 years ago, and I can still hear her scream. Can't imagine what she went through. What it's like to be homeless, and how easily one can end up homeless and how difficult it is to get back on your feet. So many of us are one bad turn of luck away from it, and I think about that a lot. I was homeless at 18. I remember that near sleep you get in your car. You never fully sleep comfortably, you're just kind of half sleeping. Scared, cold, usually hungry. I was truly blessed to have a couple angels come into my life, so I was not homeless for long, but I agree, you can't understand what it feels like. I see a lot of homeless people holding up signs near shopping centers near us. I tell my wife and kids which ones are homeless and which are not. They ask how I know. I tell them you can see it in their eyes. Homeless have a look you can't replicate. I went through it. When I recognize that look in others, I offer them to go grab some Subway or spot them gas. I've been taken up on that offer too. What makes me happy is when I never see them again. Yup. My father died, my brother became a deadbeat drug addict, and my mother got strokes and dementia. It took me 36 months to get a place again. Death of someone close to you. Yes, grief is hard to explain. Pain is real, and physical, and overwhelming. And the only way through it is through it. You don't get over it. You don't accept it. You don't make peace with it. You learn to live with it. It may be less intense, but it never goes away. I lost both my parents to COVID. They died within 8 days of each other after being on a ventilator for over a month. This was 3.5 years ago. You don't get over that. You learn to live with it. I feel you. I lost my dad to COVID in January 2021, and the process of dealing with grief is completely indescribable. It doesn't help that my father's death was questioned, ridiculed, dismissed, etc. Seeing the things people would say and post was like watching my dad die in a car accident in front of me, over and over again. I'm so sorry for your loss. My mom survived COVID, but another indescribable agony is seeing her without the love of her life and witnessing her grief and struggles. Just agony. The death of my child crushed and broke me. I've never been the same person since, and it haunts me daily. And that was 15 years ago. The other day someone in the place where I temp started screaming. It sounded like a medical emergency, but then the word got around that she got a bad phone call. I knew that it must have been the loss of a child because it sounded like someone was ripping out her heart. Turned out her 28-year-old son had died unexpectedly. I wish I knew things would get better, but I know that she'll always carry that grief, just a little differently over time. My father will have been dead 34 years on Friday. I was weeks away from turning 6 when he passed, not old enough to really have that many solid memories of him, but just old enough to have a few really good ones that make me miss him immensely every single day. I think I was maybe 8 when I started hearing people tell me in vague to eventually direct ways that I needed to get over it. After 34 years, I honestly wish I could. That's what fucking irks me when people tell you to get over someone's death. My baby sister died 40 years ago and I have never and probably won't get over it. She was my little sidekick that was always up my butt. She would only let me carry her around the house and nobody else. We had a very close bond. She was 11 months old when she passed. I have 6 daughters now. One day my mom told me something my youngest said to her that gave her chills. She said my youngest, who was about maybe 3 at the time, looked her in the face and said she remembered when my mom, her grandma, was her mom before. My daughter has a slight resemblance to my baby sister. I am so sorry, and it makes so much sense. We don't just lose people once, we lose them over and over again, for all the times they should have been here and were not. Sending you wishes for comfort and peace.